All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, we're up to the interview portion of the show. This is one of my favorite parts of the show because you always get to see what's going on behind the minds of these promoters and wrestlers and people. And this week, I'm glad to have a good friend of mine, Norton Lewis. I've known Norton, over 20 years now, right?
Yeah, at least 20 years.
Long time. We've been through up and down the roads a lot together. We've run a lot of shows together, worked a lot of places together, and it's just fun to have him in here and talk about some old times, what's going on recently, and just really what's going on with NCW up there in Greenville. Norton, glad to have you, like I said earlier in the show. I really appreciate you coming down. Tell the people who don't know, who may not know, a little bit about you and your history and what got you into the business.
Well, much like yourself and a lot of other guys, Ricky, it's you're sitting around watching Crockett Promotions, back NWA Championship Wrestling,
sure.
Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, thinking, I really want to do this, and how do I get started? Well, I think I had it a little bit easier than some of the others because my sister had dated a promoter by the name of Horace Strickland back when I was a child, and so I contacted him when I was 16 years old and told him this is what I want to do, and of course he laughed at me, and said, "You really want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really want to do this." So they made it as hard as they could on me.
Sure.
Yeah, they made me do every kind of stupid thing that you could think of to really see if I really wanted to do it, and he put me with a guy to train me by the name of Joe Wilson. It was god awful. I mean, terrible. I mean, he didn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch.
Yeah.
And I spent 6 months with him. I really think after the first 6 days that I really knew more than he did.
Exactly.
But the thing about it was I was paying my dues.
Sure. Right.
I was toting people's bags. I was helping set up rings. I was doing whatever they told me to do. And was happy to be there. From there, I moved on to a guy by the name of Gene Tucker. Gene is an idiot. I mean, a crazy man. I mean, the guy couldn't make it to a wrestling event unless he had at least a case of beer in him, and then would beat people nearly to death,
right?
And shake their hand and kiss them afterwards.
Yeah.
I was one of them. I know.
Sure.
I left with a broken nose from wrestling him and everything else. And afterwards he just said to me, "Boy, I love you to death."
Yeah. Good match. Had a great match. Yeah.
It's great. I appreciate when you busted my head open with a chair. That's the kind of man he was.
Yeah.
But I spent time with these guys, and I figured out that I'm really not progressing to the point where I wanted to. So I began to look for things myself. I spent time, we were talking about Ricky Steamboat earlier.
Yeah.
I would go up and sweep his gym, help do whatever I could to get him and Vic to give me pointers and stuff. And then from there on, I moved to Gene Anderson and Nelson Royal. Spent a lot of time with those guys. Actually, learning my trade, learning the craft, and learning to respect the business, and learning to, actually be a professional. That's the thing about it. They taught you how to be a professional wrestler.
And that's the thing about it. And I try to tell people, and nobody wants to hear what they call us, the old school guys, and they don't want to hear what we have to say. But that's the way we were taught, Norton. We were brought up, show respect. You don't speak until you're spoken to. You walk in the dressing room, you shake everybody's hand. You do what you need to do to make your way. And now it just seems like that's the thing of the past.
Yeah, I see that a lot, with a lot of the young guys that are coming up and things, and I remember days when if you walked in the locker room, you didn't shake everybody's hand. When you came back, your bag and everything probably in the garbage can somewhere.
Exactly.
You'd be dressing in the bathroom.
You would be shown the door post haste.
Yeah, right quick, like in a hurry, But I learned from a lot of good guys like that, and I spent a lot of time traveling the roads. I got the opportunity to work for Crockett Promotions, as a lot of these guys used to want to refer to us as jobbers,
Yeah,
and they act like that's a bad thing,
right.
I was paying for a house while they were lucky enough to buy suckers to suck on, just because I went out and put people like the Road Warriors and Ric Flair over.
Sure.
That was my job, And,
now let's back up just a little bit there. How did your relationship with the NWA come along? How'd you get into there?
Well, Gene Anderson was a lot of help to me in that situation because Gene and Ole actually, because when I first started wrestling, I was blonde haired, blue eyed, and they thought I was this hero to the fans and everything.
Right.
And Ole Anderson watched one of my matches one day, and he said, "You know what?" He said, "You're a heel. You're a natural heel." He said, "I can see that people don't like you." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, Ole."
Yeah. Thanks for the compliment.
Yeah, I appreciate. I don't really know how to take it. He said, "No," he said, "It's a good thing." He said, "You don't have to work at it."
Right.
He said, "I want you to come down after." And I had been working there for a few weeks, and I don't know how he arranged it and everything. He got me to come down to Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I spent some time with him, and Ole taught me how to be a heel, And to this day, I'm thankful that I spent that time with him and Gene and Nelson Royal and those type of guys. Walter McDaniels.
Well, that's history,
Ivan Koloff.
Those guys have a rich history in the business, and they knew all the stuff that was passed on to them from even the older school guys, and that's the stuff that I fear is really just going away because nobody's teaching the way they used to. Nobody's bringing you up the way we used to be brought up. And how long did you do those gigs?
Oh, probably a year and a half, 2 years of, just being lucky to get whatever spot they could get for me.
Sure.
And I remember a training session one time with Ivan Koloff where he had me doing backdrops, and he was like, and anybody knows me knows I hate backdrops.
Yeah.
And I guess he knew I hated them too.
Sure.
But he told me, he said, you're going to do as many of them till I get tired of you doing them.
Right.
And after about 2 hours of doing backdrop after backdrop after backdrop, he told me, he said, well, you finally did one right. He said, now go over and get you a drink of water and come out with do some more. I'm like, this man's trying to kill me.
He's trying to murder me right here in the middle of this ring, slowly but surely. I remember when we went up and trained with Gene Anderson up there. He would do the same thing. I was like you. I didn't hate backdrops, but I hated arm drag. For some reason, just hated them. And it seemed like they would just know whatever you didn't like, they would somehow pick it out of the air and say, "This kid don't like that."
And that's what you're gonna work on.
And that's what you worked on for the rest of the day. And that was a rough day. And but so you work with those guys. What happened beyond that?
Well, I had an opportunity to travel and stuff, and even Brody Chase and myself, we spent some time together out in Memphis, Tennessee. Went and did some time for the Von Erich family out in Texas. Actually met Steve Austin before he was stone cold.
Sure, yeah.
Was
that World Class?
It was at World Class.
Yeah. Tell us about World Class, because that's going back. That's good old school stuff there.
There was a lot of fun at World Class. There was a lot of things. There's probably a lot of things I can't even talk about on the radio that I saw at World Class. I saw a lot of guys like nobody around here even knows probably about Gino Hernandez. Gino Hernandez was one of the greatest wrestlers of his time. I mean, the guy was a great showman.
Sure.
He was a very good wrestler. He died at a young age.
Yeah.
If he hadn't have passed away like he did, that guy would have he'd be in the Hall of Fame now because he'd be a legend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw guys like him and Chris Adams.
Sure.
I worked with guys like the Missing Link.
Yeah.
Guys that nobody even knows about now. if they're not the Miz,
right,
they don't know who they are.
Right. Wrestling didn't exist before 1997
exactly.
in some people's eyes around here. And that history, man, that's why I love that they show the old AWA stuff on ESPN Classic. And I always say that's real wrestling. That's the way it was when it was believable, when there was such thing as called kayfabe, which is dead now. And that was when we kind of cut our teeth, so to speak. And that's the time, man, when it was fun to be a wrestler.
That's true.
Because the fans, man, they just bought it hook, line, and sinker. You could do anything, and it was believable, and they bought it. And tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how the fans were. How'd they react to you guys?
Well, the fans were at times were rabid back then. I mean, man, if you were the heel, if you were the guy that they hated, I mean, man, there was places that we couldn't go into by ourselves,
right?
Because the fans would literally want to start a fight or attack you,
right?
I've seen several times leaving different auditoriums, different venues where guys had to have the police escort them out.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I've even had that happen here locally. I remember a riot that started back on one of Paul Hellam's shows. When me and Cruiser and Summer were working for him, and Johnny Dollar and Paul, that we were actually wrestling, and a riot broke out at one of his local shows here.
Unbelievable.
We had to have the police escort us out.
Yeah.
See, the fans, they understood who we were, and if they hated us, they hated us.
Absolutely. Norton, let me hold you up right there. We're up on a break. We'll come back and we'll pick this up right there, and we'll move forward and move into some NCW stuff. That'll be coming right back at you inside Wrestling Radio.